You're listening to the Prosperity Report Love and Money podcast. Find out what every couple needs to become a winning team in love and money. We bring you actionable ideas from expert therapists and experienced married couples, helping you stay happily married longer. Stay tuned until the end. We'll leave you with a tip you can start using today in our 5-minute activation segment. Now here's your host, best-selling author, speaker, and psychotherapist, Kanae Corder.
Welcome to Prosperity Report Love and Money podcast. I am so excited because today I get to talk to Victoria and Greg Goebel. They have been married for 20 years. Woohoo! Celebration. And they are the proud parents of 2 teenage boys. Victoria is a therapist here in Georgia with me, and Victoria describes herself as a late bloomer, just starting her counseling career 2 years ago. Greg works full-time in ministry and also runs editing for a website. They both enjoy traveling and spending time with family. Victoria states self-care as a high priority, and learning about money is a big part of her self-care. Continually working on cultivating a positive and grateful attitude, she also enjoys playing tennis, making music, writing, and laughing. Today, we will talk a little about how uninvolved Victoria used to be in the finances and how helpful it has been for their marriage and their money that they are both now involved. The couple says, we have learned to notice what we've done right instead of just how we have missed the mark or need to improve. Noticing our progress helps us continue to work towards having better control of our finances. It makes all the difference. Spoken like a true prosperity pro. Let me introduce you to my guests, Greg and Victoria Goebel. Hey, guys.
Hey, Kine.
Hey, Kine.
Thank you so much for having us on.
I'm so glad to have you guys on, especially because of that last thing you said. You know, I am a big advocate for focusing on what's going well. So I love that that's what you took away from, your work, your financial therapy. That's so awesome.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without your coaching through that, for sure.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Wow. That's so awesome. So this will be a great way to kind of bring that in, and starting with the first question that I ask very often is, what is your idea of prosperity?
Yeah, well, I would think immediately of security, just having what you need for right now, but also for the future, not just emergencies, but maybe retirement, knowing that you're saving up for the future. And that includes your kids, that you have enough to support their needs. And then the security allows me to feel like we can be generous, not just in giving money, but in doing things with our lives that we want to do to help other people.
Yeah, awesome. I like that.
And I think of it as freedom, like giving myself and us freedom, space to do what we want to do, sort of clearing out all the negative views that I've had about prosperity and money, but having more freedom with choice, realizing that it's actually, a lot of it's about hard work. It's not just magically happening. I think of being comfortable. I think of having fun. I think of having fun, Kine.
Yes.
And balance between responsibility and pleasure.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Once when I was teaching a class for kids, I even asked this question for kids. I changed it a little bit because they don't know the word prosperity usually. But this little boy, he was about 8 years old, and he said, "Oh, my idea of wealthy or rich is I can do anything I want to do, and then I don't."
That's really cool.
That is it. He kind of boiled it down, but he said it better than I did.
I know, but that when you just said that was like the same thing. I was like,
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And
he knows.
That's one of the best ways I've ever heard somebody say that.
I know, right? And he was 8. I was like, out of the mouths of babes, boy. I love that. I wish I would have recorded it because it was so freaking cool. So, you said something in your idea of prosperity that made me think of another question. And that is, how has your idea of prosperity changed? Because based on the way you answered the question, it sounds like you had another idea about money.
Yeah, and I think it helped when we first started our sessions and you were asking about my relationship with money. I'd never even heard that question or thought of money as something you have relationship with, and went back into sort of like, how is money viewed in my family and what's your attitude? And that helped me finding out that I kind of had this starving artist idea of money, and thinking of prosperity as just big, broad terms, like it related to materialism. I thought it was like a noose around my neck, and it was just keeping me from what I wanted.
Yeah.
If I was going to pay attention to money, somehow I was going to become greedy and I was going to be a slave to it. It meant somehow I was going to take it from other people. It doesn't make sense, but somehow inside myself, I had all these thoughts about it, and that people mysteriously become prosperous. So it was a big turnoff. I mean, when I first heard that word, even, I just had a lot of negativity around it.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
And that's the programming. And not just you, millions of people believe this, and society perpetuates it. And then there are people who actually are like that, right? Greedy people do exist. And some of those greedy people are wealthy. And so then we get evidence of it, and our brains are like, yes, see, I knew it. Rich people are greedy, right? Yeah. Awesome. That's a great plan.
I think, though, to take it a little bit further, what changed is that I kind of had to dive into, first of all, just recognize that I had those beliefs that I didn't even realize, and then diving into it.
You did that really easily. You weren't resistant. Just remembering how I say this to you, and you probably don't really believe me, but you truly
I was surprised by that.
You are one of my favorite clients. I do not say that to all of my clients. Truly, you weren't resistant. You really picked up, and you really went all in.
You might be in trouble, though, because you just said that on the air. So
that's okay.
I love it.
I would say for both of us, but especially for me, your idea of prosperity or your life goals are being a social worker and a minister. We weren't expecting to have huge amounts of money laid up, but I think I started to lose hope that we could have the resources that we needed to do the kind of things we wanted to do with our life, and just feel like we were sort of stuck. So for me, the prosperity, mentality is beyond just having a certain amount of money, or, the most money you can accumulate. And maybe for some people, that's one of their life goals, is to accumulate a certain amount of money, and that's great. But for us, it was just the resources that we need to do the things that were our vocations, and just to be able to do those things. And I feel like it's really given me a new sense of hope. And even with little things like everyday objectives and little things that we do to try to move forward every day, it's like you have something to do that day that's positive, and it's about prosperity and resources. And once you do that thing, for me, it just, the anxiety is way down, and I just feel really positive and hopeful about it.
Yay. Greg, you bring up such a good point, because a lot of times in our work, because we are here to serve, are here to help people, it's like we're almost bad if we want to make money doing it, right? We're somehow wrong for expecting to have a good income and serve. And so you get, again, going back to society, you get the idea that you're somehow wrong if you say, I want to have a good life. I want to travel. I want to be generous, because if you get some money, you could just serve more, right?
That is so true. That is so true.
Can we put some massages in there too?
Absolutely.
Let's throw that in. Right. Along with the serving. Let's not forget that.
Because the massage is going to help you serve more as well, which is why you need the money. Because you may hear me say, money can buy happiness. And that's because it affords you the lifestyle you need in order to continue to do the things that really make you happy. So if you can get massages, you can serve more. Because I'm telling you, when you're tense, you're not going to want to serve as long. Where if you get a massage and you're all loose and relaxed, you can serve for hours and hours and hours. Nobody can stop you, right?
That is so true.
And so it comes down to you understanding that you're being your best self when you have a certain amount of money. And that doesn't necessarily have to be millions. For somebody, it is, right? For other people, it may be, $120,000 a year and I'm good. Whatever that number is, you just have to know your number, not focus on anybody else's number, and just kind of know your own number.
I like what you said too. You could be tempted if you're in a helping profession really, if you're in any profession, but especially there, to say, well, if I have more income, I could do more serving. And then meanwhile, you're not taking care of yourself and your own needs. So
Yep.
you're going to burn out.
Exactly. You're going to burn out. And then who can you help? Nobody. You can't even help yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about success, because in our work, especially, and other people listening might be able to connect with this, because we're not working corporate jobs where, you go from, entry level to management to upper management to CEO, or, whatever. You can start a company and do that, maybe. But as a service person, how do we define success? Have you thought about that?
I've thought about it, but I can't say that I'm there yet. I think I struggle with this idea of success. I sometimes still do things that are sort of self-sabotaging. Like recently went for an interview. I get to these second interviews sometimes, and then suddenly I don't know what happens. But I think it is a fear of success that I still have. But I think that it is shifting my idea about what it means to be successful. Part of that fear might be based on comparing to other people, what it would mean for them to be successful, but what does it mean for me to be, the kind of therapist that has my particular gifts and personality and humor, and that I can't do some things and I can do others. I think that's something I'm still grappling with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it probably evolves over time, like you get it and then you have this idea and then that idea evolves even more. What would you say, Greg?
Yeah, I would just echo what Victoria's saying. I think it's very personal in the sense that, what is it that you want to do with your life? What are your goals? But being successful is just really believing that you can get there. And if your goal is to start a nonprofit or to start a practice to help other people, then believing that you can do that and that you have the resources around you to do it is success to me. If you're in the banking world, we have a relative that's in the banking world, and maybe his goals look a little bit different, but the success part is just him believing that he can become the CEO of a bank if that's, what he wants to do and feels like is his calling in life. I think, say what Victoria said, just learning how to not sabotage that, but figure out what it is you want to do, and then just believing that the resources are around you to do it.
But part of prosperity and like this whole process that you've helped me and us to come through is clearing the way. Like, I always think about that. Like, it's clearing the way for me to see. That's the hard work for me, of looking into the mirror of money, seeing, where am I using my resources? Where is my money going? And if I had more, then wouldn't that clear me up to do some things I want to do? And it's kind of scary to step up to the plate. So
that's a great point.
Yeah. When I think of success, I think part of it is this work we're doing right now, which is clearing away those old beliefs about money and prosperity. But then on a more practical level, I can say I feel very successful that Greg and I now work together as a couple. We've definitely made progress and met goals and have success in our financial health. But the big success with a capital S, I'm kind of not sure about that.
Yeah. And that's okay. I think that we sometimes believe that we have to have all the answers. And what's so awesome is that you're so evolved in who you are that you can say, I'm not sure, and I'm still deciding that. And sometimes I don't get it right. That is so beautiful. And another point you make in metaphysics, which, aside from being a therapist, I grew up in a church and I studied metaphysics, and clearing is one of those words you hear a lot in metaphysics, because you do have to clear the space in order to even know what success is, right? You've got to clear the space. And a lot of times the clearing is that tough stuff that we do. Yeah. And financial therapy wasn't easy for you. I remember jokingly you calling me a bee.
My torturer. I think I called you my torturer.
Right. But, and so it wasn't always easy. It was like those growing pains. But I kept telling you, it's going to be second nature. It's going to be easier. And you're like, are you sure?
Yeah. And there were moments that felt like I remember coming into your office with my computer and one of my big spreadsheets and coming in there, and you just said, bring it in. And you were very gentle, even though I was panicked. And that was like, for me, I remember that being almost like the worst time and feeling kind of humiliated that I had to come in and ask for this help. And I remember that. And it feels so good to be able to look back now and to realize what felt so overwhelming. We made it through that obstacle. and I can
Yes.
look back and say that we did. But it's good to be reminded of how hard it was, because then, inevitably something else is going to come up that's a challenge, and to be able to remind myself is helpful.
That you can push through. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Greg, what was that like for you watching Victoria go through these growing pains and doing something that she didn't necessarily have to do because you had been doing it?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you?
I was really excited that she was doing it because I felt like we had both wanted to be involved together with the finances and the bills, but we just kind of evolved to a place where I was handling that. And maybe, when you have young kids and things were going on, we just kind of divided up, but then we never really got back to it. And so I was excited because I felt like we had gotten stuck. We were sort of both trying to work on it together, but every time we did, it wasn't working. So
we were arguing too.
We were arguing. So having you come in there and having a third party that was giving really good principles and helping us to look at it, not just from a numbers perspective, but relational and emotional, having a vision and goals. I thought it was great. I really thought it was cool how hard Victoria was working to just kind of overcome, going several years, just really not having to or choosing to think about that, having to go in there and sit down and go through that stuff. I thought it was so cool. And I was just glad that we had you helping us.
Yeah, that helped, having that neutral party, because there was so much emotional. I remember, when we would get together for budget meetings, and one of the things Kine said is, I don't remember the wording you used, but basically, this is factual. Let's keep it about the money. And so many emotions came, and we would say to ourselves, for both of us, we'd say, all right, this is about the numbers. Remember that, Greg?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was really helpful because, you just go for 30 or 40 minutes working on a budget meeting and talking about financial goals and just keep circling back to the numbers. Mm-hmm. It just felt good. It seems to me like the more times we were able to succeed in doing that, the more we wanted to have these meetings, and they became a positive part of our life.
Yeah. And to the point where you were pretty excited about the budget meeting, because I remember it being like, oh gosh, we've got to have that budget meeting.
I know it.
We have just completed 14 months in a row of those this month.
Yes.
Yay. That is so awesome.
I know. And it's interesting because sometimes it'll be like one of us really won't feel like it, but the other one, like the last few meetings, he'll get our binder out and everything out, and it's time, So it helps when there's two to sort of get the other one going.
And we really, really feel together on it now.
But I do want to go back a little bit to what you were saying about before I got involved. And Greg had said for a long time that he'd like me to be more involved. I don't know at the time if I even, I don't know why, but I almost didn't believe him, like that he wanted me to be involved. And it was a big shift for me because I was suddenly in this just financial details, which I don't like at all. But it was also like this whole idea that I had been kind of dependent on Greg in other ways in our relationship. And so this was kind of like a stepping up to the plate moment. I used to say things jokingly to Greg, like if there was a problem with finances or otherwise, Greg would be like nervous or anxious about finances. And I would say jokingly, don't worry, sweetie, you'll figure it all out. And we kind of joke, but that's kind of not funny.
Right.
So I feel like it's taken all that you said to me before too. It's taken the weight off you, that it's not all on your shoulders, as it should be, that we're doing this together.
Yeah. And I think that kind of thing hurts everybody. I think we both were learning how to do this together. And, once you get going with the finances, you're paying the bills, you're making decisions, then you start getting possessive of it because you want it to be done a certain way. Or maybe you're defensive because this is what I was thinking sometimes was, I'm trying to do the best I can here. And then if somebody else comes in, if you come in, or if some financial advisor looks at it, I'm going to feel defensive, because I'm not a financial person. I'm a priest. So I've been doing the best I can, people. And that was kind of what was going through my head. But actually opening up and listening and learning what you were learning with the counseling and then working on it together, that has just gone away. I mean, I just feel like anybody that has something to tell us, well, I shouldn't say anybody, but if anybody who has something helpful, any expert, if it can help us, let's do it. And then again, even listening to each other, I mean, feeling comfortable, Victoria, to hear what your thoughts are and just really listen and not feeling so defensive is pretty cool.
That's been so big for me too, to feel valued and like I do have something to add and I have a perspective. Mm-hmm. We've learned, instead of thinking, well, why doesn't Greg do it this way? And he may be thinking, why doesn't she do it this way? Instead, well, Greg has a great perspective that's different from mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's valuing my perspective, and we're learning how to talk about that and negotiate rather than sort of butting heads and both being defensive, me because I've not been involved and maybe have a chip on my shoulder, Greg because the new kid's in town now. So, but I think that's really been true for our marriage. I think it's been helpful just to be able to value each other's input.
Yeah. And I work really hard to be gentle with the spouse that's not there because I know that they don't get to meet me. So they don't know. And 75% of our thoughts are negative. So let me start with that. So knowing that, I know this. So I know that when you go home and say, Kine said that Greg is going to be like, what? She don't live here? Like,
tell me why do you keep talking about this person? Who?
Right. So I know.
And I did have that behind me too. It'd be like, well, Kine said, Greg might say something. And instead of just saying like what I thought, I'd be like, well.
Right. So I know this. So I bake into the program if it's only one, because sometimes I do have the couple, but sometimes I don't. If there's only one person in front of me, I am still treating the couple. I am still looking at what it means for Greg, for Victoria to come home and get her hands in the money. That means something. And for 18 years or however many years, he was doing it on his own. And I am not going to go in like, you better put your foot down. I'm going to be like, wait, woman, you need to tread lightly because this man has been carrying this weight for a long time.
That is what you said.
Take it off one brick at a time.
Yeah. That is what you said. I've forgotten about that, but you did. Mm-hmm. You would always encourage me to consider how long Greg's been doing this and just not to come blowing in there with
Exactly. Because it wasn't to create more divisiveness. It was to create that camaraderie. It was to create the connection. And if you do it in that way, like, I know now, listen to me, right? It's like, whoa, yeah, hold on.
So I wanted to, it like a champ, though. For the most
I do
part.
Too. I absolutely do too.
That was a great process, even though it was like you said. Sometimes I felt defensive and wasn't sure, but then we just kept talking, and like I love what you just said. One brick at a time. I agree. That's really what the process felt like, even though the bricks were kind of heavy sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I appreciate the way that you supported Victoria through the whole thing. And not in a, you go do that thing you're doing out there and learn something. Like, not in that way, but in a comforting way. And that's admirable. Doesn't happen all the time.
I think both of us in our hearts really felt the need to do it. And so even though we weren't both at the sessions, we both felt kind of open. I don't know if that's true for you, Victoria, but I think we both just felt really open to it.
Yeah, I think it's like you said. I remember at the beginning, it seemed like you were kind of like, okay, you were supportive, like, go do it, but you did seem a little like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I'm taking my hands off this. Kind of like you were supporting me, but you were kind of stepped back. But then I think, and you can tell me if this is true, once we started making some progress and you were kind of hearing the things that Kine was sharing, it just seemed like you were more and more on board, and we both were. Is that true, you think, Greg?
One of the things I was thinking at the time, kind of my non-prosperity thinking, was just every time a dollar was spent, I was worried about it. So I was kind of thinking, we're spending this money to invest. I wasn't seeing it as an investment at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Over the course of just a few months, I started seeing what a great investment it is to have a professional support you and help you. And so my thinking's totally changed on that. But if I go back in time, that's really part of my main concern was, well, we're spending money. I didn't see it as an investment.
Ah, good point. And not that I forget that part of it. That's important that you are spending money to get this education. But that's such a great point that you make. It's like in the beginning, you're like, is this worth it? You're talking about we need to get better with our finances, but you're throwing hundreds of dollars a month away. So what are you talking about, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but it didn't take too long to see the value of it. But just initially, I think that's part of the reluctance.
Worth every single penny. I mean,
I
don't even have a doubt about that now.
Thank you. Great to hear. So I'm wondering, now that you have just, such a great perspective on money now, what has changed since over the years? I guess it's been 2 years now. And I think my biggest question I'm really wondering is what has been most helpful for handling the money? Because I don't assume that my process is exactly the same as it was when I gave it to you. You've probably evolved it into something that works for you guys. So what would you say? Has it changed, or, what has been most helpful for you guys when dealing with money in the marriage?
This is a really practical thing, and I'm usually not practical, but this has been very helpful for me. And that is, figuring out that we needed to have a paper system as much as many people do not. So we have a binder that we use, and Greg's been brilliant in putting it together. And over time, we had to figure out what was really important to have so that when we had our budget meeting, what do we want to do and how did we want to do it and in what order? So we have this binder, but we also have a little index card, and it's the budget meeting card. And we figured out what we need to do priority-wise each time we have a budget meeting. So we take turns chairing the meeting. We say a serenity prayer together. First, we say what's going on with our debt, what is that number, what is happening with our savings, and we have that as a priority, putting a certain amount of money in our debt, certain amount of money in our savings, hold buffer. We go through 11 priorities on our index card because I was feeling like in the meetings it was just chaotic. And it's just a simple index card. And on the back of it, we had some goals for 2017 because I would just get lost in all of it.
Yeah.
So I knew we had this card. We're going to touch on the things that we need to and not get lost in the process.
Yep. And the emotions.
And the emotions. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And we're both on board with this little card.
Nice.
That really helped me because how do you switch from being somebody that's defensive and trying to do it all yourself to doing it together and having a little card with the things we want to work through and then taking turns. Just all you got to do is just hand the person the card that's in charge of that meeting. And it allowed me to just sit back and kind of go through those things. And then we'd switch back. And because we had agreed on the order that we were going to go through it on, we weren't just kind of relax and let that happen. So it kind of helped me to relax too and do it.
Yeah. In the program, I actually call that Money Day. So it makes Money Day not seem so stressful. One, because sometimes you're not the chair of the meeting, the way that you guys run it. You can sit back and let the other person run it. But sometimes you are the chair of the meeting, and being the chair of the meeting, you may feel a sense of pride for being able to handle or manage the meeting. So it goes both ways. And sometimes you want to relax, and sometimes you want to have the power, so to speak, hold the card. And the great thing about this is that it works really well with the brain. This is brain-based financial therapy, and the brain sometimes needs physicality. So that card is physical, it's real, because digital is great. And I love digital, but you're right. Sometimes you need a piece of paper. You need a symbol that says you hold the floor. And so that card is like the symbol. It becomes that physical thing that really binds what the brain is trying to do in real life.
Absolutely.
Well, I didn't know it was that fancy, Kine, but it's working.
Absolutely.
Now it's all making sense.
Yeah, because the brain is so fascinating. Its job is to protect us, and it really does a good job of doing that. In fact, sometimes too good of a job, because it sometimes protects us from the things that we really want, because it feels like that extra work or that uncertainty is too scary to accomplish it. And so it's like, no, we're not going there. That's unfamiliar. That's uncertain. I'm going to protect you from the uncertain, because when we were cavemen and cave women, uncertainty meant mountain lion. It meant tiger, So the brain, exactly. The brain is like, I'm out of here. I'm gone. So, or it's going to fight. What sometimes happened in budget meetings in the beginning, it was like the fight rather than the band together, the tribe. And so now that you guys are working as a tribe, now you can even pass that down to your sons.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. And teenagers with money is one or two things. It can either be really dangerous or it can be really powerful, if you give them the tools, because I've seen, especially in this day and age, teenagers do some really powerful things with money.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. And if you have a little card that you use to work through your money meeting, then you can hand it to one of the teenagers and say, why don't you lead us through this and kind of explain to them what you're doing? And it's just that simple.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because the greatest thing, and you probably already experienced this when I bring it up, you're going to be like, yeah, when you hear them get on board with one of your money goals because they've heard you talk about it so much that you're like, wait, I don't even know if I told you that, but somehow you're telling me that. Or when they kind of hold you accountable, you're like, oh.
Yeah, I don't know that I think that that's a direction we would like to both go more in as far as involving the kids. I mean, I know they're seeing some changes for sure, but I think it's good to have it brought to our attention because getting ready to go to college, we are talking more about as far as him getting a car, he's going to get a job and then he'll pay half, we'll come in and pay half. But it is coming up now, like to where it's very important because he's going to be leaving. So he needs these skills. About money.
That's true. You kind of forget that this is something that we've worked really hard to learn, and then to involve them in it. Just you're not really forcing it on them, but just involving them. They now have some tools that maybe we didn't have or know about, and you're just passing it on.
Yep, absolutely. And sometimes you can do that vicariously because children learn from example more than what you tell them. But you do have to tell them. But the example comes first. They watch you and then you tell them. And then just like you said about what I explained about the brain, like, oh, now it makes sense. That's what's going to happen with them. Oh, I've been watching my parents do this. And now they just explained it to me. Now it makes sense.
That's such a good reminder, though, Kine, that not just modeling, but then actually saying what you're doing, too, because I think I forget that sometimes. Kind of take it for granted. It doesn't have to be a big, complicated, perfectionistic lesson on money. It can just be, this is what we're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So this has been so awesome. And I want you all listening out there to stay to the end because we're about to give you our 5-minute activation. But before we do that, I want to ask you one of my favorite questions, and I want you both to answer. So what is the best marriage advice you've ever received or the advice you wish someone would have told you?
Ooh. Greg, how about you? You want to go first?
Want me to?
You want me to?
Well, I just think that the best advice, we didn't always follow it, but when we have, it's been really helpful, is just to get support, get help, whether it's counseling, whether it's support at your church or going on marriage retreats or support groups or just peers and professional, life. Anything you can do to have healthy, strong people around you that you can turn to, whether you're going there as a couple or whether you're doing that as individuals. Man, I think go do it right away. Don't wait. Some of the ministers that I work with will complain that a couple will come to talk to them, as a last resort. It's kind of like they're thinking we don't go to talk to somebody until things are really bad. Just have it become a regular part of your life. And it can be fun too. I mean, it can be something fun and enjoyable. And other times maybe it's painful and hard, but yeah, just getting that outside support.
Yeah, that is so true. Great point. Kind of like preventive medicine rather than going to have surgery or whatever. You could have just been taking your vitamins and eating right instead of getting high blood pressure.
That's it. That's right.
Right. Good point. I love that. So good. Victoria?
Well, my thought about it is really to accept your spouse, your partner for who they are. Like I think about when we were married in earlier years, I was very dependent on Greg, and I kind of had a perfectionist view toward him, and he had all the answers, not just financial, but I kind of had him on this pedestal. And so we're even finding out recently that I wasn't able to be there for him at a time emotionally when he really could have used my help. I didn't even know it, but, because he didn't fit the supermodel that I had for him and can't be strong all the time. So maybe not allowing him to need me emotionally, I think, at the time. And I think it's so important to learn about who that person is that we're with. Who are they really? And maybe some people are already there, but I certainly wasn't. Finding out what really is important to them. How can I support them in their own dreams rather than my own ideas about who I want them to be for me? So that is the advice that I would give people. Find out who the person really is and let them change when they change.
Oh, yes. I love that
part too.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
That really is. So, wow. That was a great way to end it because I think that was so powerful. I just want to say pretty much everything we talked about today was pretty powerful. I think this is one of the best conversations that I've had about financial therapy in a long time because a lot of times I'm talking about it to people who haven't experienced it. So it doesn't flow as much. It's a lot of one-sided, me giving them information and them going, I guess, maybe, sort of. But so for me to talk with someone who has gone through it, experienced it, and who is still using it in their life is so much fun for me. I hope you guys had as much fun as I
Oh,
had.
I did. And you're so encouraging,
Loved it.
Kine, and I just would recommend you to anyone out there. You made it easier than I could ever possibly imagine. One of the hardest things to me. We do have one concern we were talking about, though. When this podcast goes viral and I'm finally famous, we're going to have a lot of money. And so we're going to need to hire you to help us. We don't know what to do with those kind of big bucks.
Right.
So be expecting a phone call.
Okay, absolutely.
We're
I'm on
about
it.
to go up to a new level.
I will clear my schedule for my favorite client.
That'll change money day, that's for sure.
That would definitely change money day. You'll need 2 money days.
That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you guys for listening. It's time for 5-minute activation, a quick financial therapy session to get you activated and on your way to increasing the love and money in your marriage. So can I get 5 minutes of your time? Just 5 minutes for a financial therapy activation. Today's topic is be a lifelong learner. There is so much information out in the world that you could study. History, geography, technology, money. There's so much about money. Money is constantly changing. The finance world is always new things to learn, new products, new services, and new technology. But there's one very important subject that you should remain a lifelong learner on, and that is learning your spouse and learning yourself. There's so much that's going to be new about your spouse because you are constantly growing, right? Well, so is your spouse. Your spouse is constantly learning new things, which means your spouse is constantly growing and changing. And you can remain curious about who they have become. And when you remain curious to see who they've become, you are a lifelong learner of your spouse. And then you tell them who you're becoming. And they are a lifelong learner of you. And that is so attractive. It adds to the love in your relationship. As you learn more about money and any other subject you choose, you also learn more about your spouse. And while the two of you grow together, the other thing is you learn from your spouse. So you're learning about your spouse, but you're also learning from your spouse. That is so beautiful. Now, you may need a third party to help you sift through all the information out there. That could be an advisor, that could be a financial therapist. Because many people dream of having a happy marriage, but that dream is often blocked by fights and confusion and complex life decisions. People are hurting. I understand that. That's why I have a plan, a prosperity plan to clear the path to happiness. Do you argue about how money is spent or having debt? Do you and your spouse have different opinions about how money should be saved, earned, invested? You're not alone. A study done revealed approximately 31% of all couples, even the happiest ones, clash over their finances at least once a month. The most common points of disagreement were major purchases, decisions about finances and children, a partner's spending habits. Important investment decisions was the other one. Now, these are the most common, but you may have a few of your own. Tell me, how would it feel to have twice the love and money and half the stress and arguments in your marriage? Marriage is hard enough without having to worry about money constantly and how it's being spent. Now, what if I could assist you and your partner in learning your money personality, understanding your partner's personality, and creating a step-by-step plan that's easy to follow to help you reach your true heart's desire, your idea of prosperity? That's the Prosperity Club. It's a library of money and marriage courses that help you get inspiration, insight, and accountability. I created Prosperity Club to help couples get on the path to happiness. Would you like to stay happily married and reach your idea of prosperity together? Of course you would. Join the Prosperity Club today. It's easy. Start with our $1 trial membership. Go to KineCorder.com/trial and you'll start your 7-day financial challenge. It's just $1, a 7-day challenge to help you increase your finances with your partner. And if you don't like it, if you don't think we can work together successfully, then do nothing. Your membership ends. But if you like, you can upgrade and go to the next thing. But don't worry about that now. Just start with the 7-day challenge and get on the path with your partner to happiness. Go ahead, join the Prosperity Club today and bring more prosperity your way. I'll see you soon. Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you want more love and money conversations, subscribe to this podcast. Also, tell your friends about us. I'll see you next episode. But in the meantime, head on over to presidentiallifestyle.com for more tips, tools, and resources. And go ahead and leave us a comment if you like. We'd love to hear from you. This show is not to replace professional counsel. The best advice comes from a professional you know. The topics discussed in this podcast are general in nature and are for entertainment and informational purposes only. We encourage you to meet with a professional to discuss your specific situation, whether financial or therapeutic. That's all for now. I'll see you sooner. Remember, no matter what anybody ever tells you, you can have wealth in all of its forms. Believe it, and you will soon see it.